Good morning, everyone. Let's call to order our Board of County Commissioners meeting for December 8th.
Solomon.
Present.
Commissioner Harris.
Present.
Commissioner Waymire.
Present.
Commissioner Dickinson.
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn.
Present.
And a pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, today's invocation. Morning.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father God, I thank you for another day you've given us. You're such a good God. We thank you, Lord God, that you give your Son for us so we can have life more abundantly. I pray, God, your blessings upon all of our county workers, Lord. Just be with them and bless them mightily. We thank you for everything, Lord God. Give you all the praise and all the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Do you have any public comment?
Nope.
All right, our consent agenda today will include meeting minutes from November 4th, claim vouchers in the amount of $259,120.52, payroll in the amount of $1,244,383.96, special payroll, that's $3,406.43, and tax change orders, that's a positive amount of $4,224.56. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Harris.
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson. Commissioner Dunn.
Yes.
Mr. Stottlemyre.
Yes.
Chair Waymire.
Yes. Our first item of business is a special use permit application. Morning, Kenny.
Okay, so I do have a little bit of additional information on this application that is before us. This was a request for an event venue over just west of 33 on Pawnee Road, and used to be where the Bohee Cattle Ranch had their auctions out of this facility. The current owner that has purchased it, the facility is, most people, I think if you went in, would say is somewhat set up for this type of facility. They have men's and women's bathrooms with multiple stalls and other improvements that would lead you to think that this is something similar that's happened. The Bohee Cattle Ranch operated more as an agricultural use, and so it was considered more as exempt from zoning regulations under sort of how their operation was run. The new property owners wanted to use it as more of an actual just event venue for other things, so people to rent it for birthday parties, weddings, and those types of things. So it does sort of change how we look at it, even though there's not a lot of change that's going to happen to the facility. The case actually started back in June, so before I even was employed by Franklin County, and was continued for a number of meetings to allow for the applicants to provide some additional information and to allow for the Planning Commission, I think, to discuss the item additionally. Probably the main items that we did just sort of get addressed here in the last month or so was with the type of facility that is in operation that's being proposed. There would generally be some building code requirements in regards to fire suppression systems in our code. Most of the rural areas in the county don't really have the ability to provide that type due to restrictions on the size of water lines. And
Sprinklers.
So, yes, that's correct. And so what staff presented to the applicants was to work with a fire protection engineer to come up with sort of a equivalent plan to show and document that they have enough exits, that the facility's designed in order to safely exit people in case there was an event or issue that happened while an event was going on. And so the applicants did work with pool fire protection engineers and came up with a plan that shows that this facility definitely exceeds a lot of the other requirements and standards in the code that would normally be required. And he's provided his, I think, engineering opinion that it does exceed the minimum requirements of the code. So that was probably the largest issue, I would say, that from a staff perspective that was difficult to sort of work through. On this request, we did have a number of adjoining property owners and neighbors that expressed concern in regards to the request. The new facility is going to bring additional traffic into the area, which has impacts on noise and dust and lights, as vehicles will probably be leaving the facility late at night sometimes. And so there is an ability for the lights to shine into especially some of the neighbors' houses as they're exiting the facility. Staff has worked with the applicants on trying to come up with a plan to address those issues. As I told the Planning Commission, the conditions, usually when we're doing a special use permit, we try to figure out what we can do to mitigate the issues as much as we can, with the understanding that I think we can't really 100% mitigate everything. So we know if this gets approved, there's going to be some impacts on the neighbors and how it affects their lives out there. The neighbors did actually submit a protest petition. So according to state statutes, there is a 2-week period after the Planning Commission meets before it can go to the Board of County Commissioners, where neighbors within 1,000 feet of the property are allowed to submit a protest petition, and if more than 20% of the property owners that own land within that 1,000-foot notification area sign on to the protest petition, then it requires a supermajority vote of the Board of County Commissioners in order to approve the request. I think the wording and the zoning regulations with majority in order to pass it if there is a valid protest petition. Janet, I think, did some of the work for us and verified the signatures, and the letter I provided to you is what she has provided to me. It does, there's a valid protest petition that has been filed on this case, and so approval of the request would require that 4/5 majority vote in order to approve the request. I would note that there was, I think, one property owner that signed it as a trust, that it does appear that there was a second individual that needed to sign, so that because of that property can't really be included as a valid part of the protest petition. There was another property owner that we just didn't have records on file for his signature, so we couldn't really match that and verify. But as part of the protest petition, the individual that circulated it has signed and I think had it notarized that he did actually check and knows who that person was. And so I think that one is probably would be considered valid. But either way, even if both of those got thrown out, they were still over 20%. So there is that. Another item that came up a little bit more recently at the Planning Commission meeting, that the Planning Commission did make a recommendation of approval of the request with a number of conditions. They did also recommend that staff make a couple of amendments to some of those conditions. So the copy of the resolution that's in your packet sort of shows the current conditions as what was approved by the Planning Commission. The modifications that they requested was that the expiration of the CUP basically would happen in 2 years. So basically in 2 years they would need to come back through the process again. Sort of gives them a chance to, I think, get started to show that they're going to do what they said that they're going to do as part of their application, and would give the Planning Commission the ability to sort of revisit this in a couple of years to verify that hopefully the impacts aren't, are trying to be mitigated as much as we can. The other one was in regards to the wastewater system for the facility. The wastewater system for this facility has been a holding tank. What staff has suggested in regards to this request was that while our current code would not normally allow for the use of a holding tank, so if they came in today and were building a new structure, we would have been telling them, you're putting in a whole new system that complies with our code. In this case, because it was on an existing holding tank, staff was supportive of just keeping the existing holding tank and allowing them to use that. I would say that was probably one of the main items for discussion at the Planning Commission meeting, was in regards to concerns for that, of whether we should require them to upgrade that to comply with current county standards. At the end of the day, I think they, especially with the reduction down to 2 years to where we're going to be out there and verifying things again, I feel like the majority of the planning commissioners were acceptable to sort of allowing it to continue. And then if anything ever does fail, they're going to have to update the facility, or if they don't take care of it in the manner in which they have expressed, then they'll also have to upgrade the facility. So the other item that was a primary item for discussion at the meeting was in regards to possible dust control for the traffic along the road. What is required under the current conditional use permit is that they would participate in the county's dust control program, so basically pay to have dust control on the property from the entrance over to the east property line of the neighboring property, I think is how we have it currently worded. There was discussion on whether that should be extended just all the way to 33 Highway, and I think of the two planning commissioner members, I think that voted opposed to the request, I believe one of them had really strong feelings in regards to the wastewater system, and I think the other one had strong feelings in regards to the dust control. And so, again, I think while some of the other planning commissioners had expressed concern on those items, I think the limitation of 2 years and needing to come back sort of allowed them to say, let's give it a try, and then if we need to, we can make the standard a little bit higher if there are still issues going on.
Kenny, I want to jump in and just clarify. You're saying this, but I want to make sure that it's crystal clear. Sanitation stuff, dust control, that is literally built into the special use permit. If you look at, you have the resolution in front of you, if you look at section 2, clause 5, we literally say right there, if the holding tank fails or if you don't pump it, if there is any discharge at all, Franklin County shall require that you update the sanitation. So I feel like Kenny's done an excellent job of mitigating any risk associated with the holding tank. And we will be out there to monitor. And so the applicant knows if they don't pump this like they say they're going to pump it, then we're going to require them to install whatever that would, if it's a septic or whatever it would look like out there, or we're going to pull their permit and revoke it. So.
And we have staff that's dedicated to, we deal with failed systems all the time. We inspect systems all the time. It's just something that, quite frankly, if you're inclined to have human waste laying around, you're probably not going to take out the trash. You're probably, I don't know. Your investment's not going to be protected. They have plenty of incentive to take care of their place as well at the end of the day.
And the owner and the individual, I think, that is going to be more running the facility has expressed that they will be inspecting the tank for capacity basically after every single event. So once they get up to like 3/4 full, they're going to go ahead and get it scheduled to get it pumped so that they don't accidentally go over it. it is an enforcement thing that we will have to worry about, and I think that was some of the concern from the Planning Commission. We're not necessarily going to go out every single weekend and the county personally check it, but our pumpers are supposed to let us know if they see something that's wrong, on the system. So we're supposed to find that out, or especially with the short time frame, we'll definitely go out in 2 years to inspect it, because that was definitely a major concern on this. But yeah, we tried to address those concerns as much as we could in the conditions, and I'd be happy to go over any of those conditions that you might want to. The other item that I did want to bring up.
Kenny, before we're going on, I got a question about the sanitary system. If a person comes to this county and buys a house that has a holding tank, would we authorize occupancy of the new owner, or would that person have to upgrade the sanitary system before they could occupy that house?
I do believe in a lot of cases, if we were dealing with a residential house that had a holding tank that was on a property that was sufficient size, that we would usually require that to be upgraded. The other part I would say that I talked with Guy about in regards to this request was the use of this facility makes the design of the system a little bit more difficult. Where a house we're going to have constant flow every day, this facility is going to have big waves of use when it occurs, and then it's going to have periods of time where nothing happens. And so for like a standard subsurface type system, it's going to be difficult to get a system that functions properly because of that. A lagoon wouldn't be a horrible way of dealing with this, because it would deal a little bit better with those fluctuations in use. I think the only time that we've generally allowed for holding tanks have been on parcels where there is absolutely no other option. That is something that, again, the Planning Commission definitely discussed it. A lot of them had concern. Definitely some of them expressed a strong desire that they felt like that needed to be brought up into compliance right now. At the end, they decided to sort of at least give it sort of the 2-year time period to see how it operates before they made them. In 2 years, we could look at it again and then require them to maybe update that system if we desired.
How long ago was he used as a sale barn? Any idea?
I am not.
You know how long, Rod, they used to have sales out there?
It's at least, I lose track of time, but it's been at least 5-6 years ago, I'd say. And Bohai's owned it.
Yeah.
It was probably built. Do we have record when it was built?
I believe because it was built as an exempt structure, we don't really have much.
If we put a holding tank in, we should have record of that.
I think we had some documentation in the file that showed, because there is also a small dwelling on this property, so there was a septic system on there, and then we had documentation that there was a 3,000-gallon holding tank. But I do believe, from talking with Guy, my understanding is when this facility was built, we would have allowed holding tanks. We've changed that regulation since then. But then I don't know that we have any permits on file for when anything actually got constructed on this parcel.
The applicant's here?
On St. Connie. Okay. So yeah, she's not here right now. The other item I just wanted to sort of note in regards to this, and this maybe would impact what you guys want to do today. So as part of the Planning Commission's recommendation of approval, with the changes in the occupancy numbers that were proposed from when this request originally came to the Planning Commission until it got approved. Originally, they were saying that it was going to be like 50 to 60 people. The occupancy based off of the fire engineer's report is 300. And they have provided an updated parking plan showing that they can have 100 vehicles parked in their parking areas. And so with that increase of this occupancy of the structure, the Planning Commission did recommend that I contact KDOT again to verify if that increase would impact their recommendation that they had made to us back months ago. Originally, KDOT had said that they didn't really have any issue with the request, but only 50 to 60 people on an event wasn't probably a big concern for them. When we did go up to 300, they did reply back to say that they do have some concern in regards to the request. They would recommend that the county require a traffic impact study be done by the developer to make sure that issues are addressed in regards to the intersection of Pawnee and 33 Highway. I know that one of the neighbors did express concern in regards to visibility at that intersection. And so the best way to sort of address that would actually be doing a traffic impact study to verify that proper visibility is available. I think we've gone by and based off of like, rough, us just sort of looking at it, not making any real official measurements or anything. It's close. It looks like it probably meets the standards that KDOT gave me as to what they would be looking at. But that's the type of thing that, you know, we would want a professional engineer to actually look at all of those issues and make sure that that it meets those, or if there are improvements that are needed as part of that. So
Was that information available in Planning Commission?
it was not. Yeah, I just got that here, I think this week, that I got that email back from KDOT. So the original comment from KDOT was that they didn't have any issue with the use. But that was with the original description of 50 to 60 people.
Oh, the Planning Commission considered it was for that 50 to 60 people, not the 300.
The Planning Commission did consider it for the 300, but that's where they asked me to verify with KDOT
Gotcha.
if there was an issue. I would note that KDOT has told me, because the entrance isn't directly onto KDOT property, they cannot require a traffic study. They cannot require the county do a traffic study. They would just recommend that a traffic study be done in order to address these concerns. And it is one of the items that was included by the neighbors as part of the protest petition. Was one of their concerns that they expressed.
I know I went to several of the meetings, and I read all the minutes from the past meetings, and it just seemed like their number just kept growing and growing and growing as time went on. What's to stop them? I know a lot of big wedding parties and stuff put up big tents. What's to stop them from putting up a tent and 200 in the building and 200 in the tent? I mean, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be a matter of enforcement, which is on any kind of case like this is going to be difficult because most of these activities are going to happen at times that staff is not normally working. So, you know, if somebody has a wedding Saturday night, we're probably going to get a complaint about it on Monday. And at that point, it'll probably be a little bit hard for us to document, but definitely with the concerns that neighbors have expressed, I would anticipate that they will probably be providing pictures to us and documentation as to when things didn't go right. I don't like having to deal with things sort of after the fact. It'd be nice if we were able to, if there was something that was a violation, to address it like when the violation's happening. But really on these types of uses, we're going to get the report that there was a violation that happened, and then we're going to review it. And I think the other part is that 2-year time frame before the use expires and they have to go back through the process sort of gives us an ability to look at this and say, you're not being a good neighbor. This is not fitting into the character of the neighborhood. You're not following the conditions that you agreed to. We're not going to renew your special use for this facility.
First thing, I apologize because I remember when Larry started, we had one of the biggest landfill properties ever in the county, and that was his very first thing. So I understand that you've got thrown into this, and this is probably one of the bigger issues we've had in a long time. I need to ask one question though. I'd better be civil, but did we ever get a letter from Rural Water 6 on an engineering study?
We got a response from them. I think Pat called them, and I think some other people called them as well. And the response we got back is that they weren't concerned in regards to the water use for this type of facility. I don't think that we ever got official written response. We did get verification that they have water, and then the water district did verbally tell us that it's sufficient for the use that's going to happen.
And the similar uses happened in the past too.
Similar use. The one thing I would say that the neighbors definitely expressed is, while it is a similar use, it's going to happen more often. Where my understanding is the Bowie cattle auction was more of like a one-time-a-year activity, and that they might have one other type of event or something in the barn as well during the year, where this one does have the possibility of having many
more frequent
times. Yeah, so.
But I was notified that they are going to do an engineer study.
They are? Oh, okay.
They are.
Okay.
And because of more information that came out after your last meeting.
Okay.
And they are going to do an engineer. That's why I asked if you got a letter from them.
No, not yet. So.
Because they feel that there's a lot more to it than what they were told in the beginning.
Okay.
And plus, I understand they have an individual meter there.
Yes.
It's not, the house has a meter, the other house has a meter. There's actually 3 meters there. And that one for them was installed as a pasture meter.
Oh, okay.
Is what it was put in for. There wasn't even a building yet, I don't think. They did it to water their cattle. It was just a pasture meter. And then it was developed into the big barn, and now a commercial place. And what bothers me on a lot of it, and I think it did several of the board members, is when we base septic systems, I'm not a professional, but it's just coming through the commissioners, we always base it on potential use. I mean, that's when you for septic system for a house, the bigger the house, the more bathrooms, the bigger the system. Even though there may only be 2 people living in this big monstrosity of a house, we still require them for potential use. And that's where I feel like this thing falls into. It's open 7 days a week, potentially. Their hours is listed in their paperwork is 90 hours a week they could be open. We actually granted them 105 hours a week if they want it. And there was 3 of the board members at the last meeting that protested. They felt that the septic system wasn't permissible. Only one of them changed their mind. Not really changed their mind, just changed their thinking when she agreed to go ahead and vote for it if they'd make it a very short term.
Yep.
And then there was one person that wasn't there. We had one board member, and I'll just read to you in the past minutes, his opinion on it. This is by Mr. Hornbuckle. Stated the current system is not up to code. The current sanitation code does not allow holding tanks. So in approving the special use permit, the county is approving a system that does not meet the adopted code. This could be setting a precedent that this building is okay to have a holding tank. So what happens when the next person wants to install a holding tank? If a homeowner wants to install a holding tank for their residents, how can the county deny them when we have allowed commercial businesses to have one? And then it was also brought up, I know it was before you were here, it was before probably any of the board members were here that are on there now. They denied a commercial business of Williamsburg because they had a holding tank. And I'll go on, the commissioners reversed that when we voted on it, and it was only because there was no room to put a system, and it was an existing system that had been there for years, and the only people using the restrooms, it wasn't public. They only had 2 or 3 employees, and that was the only people using it. And then Mr. Hornbuckle made another comment, which I'm only reading this because he wasn't there the day this vote was taken. Yeah. He was absent. This is just prior to him talking. He stated the holding tank was installed to serve cattle auctions operations that only occurred twice a year. Now it will be serving an event facility that may potentially have events every week. If we allow them to use the holding tank now with the approval of special use permit, how can we go back later and ask them to dig it up and install a new system that meets the requirements of the sanitation code and size large enough to serve its building? Now would we be time to make them upgrade the system, and then probably if there is an overload and we'll have to get the system pumped occasionally, then they'll really get busy. Well, the county probably will require them to upgrade the system for normal use anyway. And then he went on to mention, even if it is a failure, the time we got out there to check it, it'd already be dried up and done, And so I kind of agree with those. There was 4 people that thought that the tank was the wrong thing for us to do. Basically, being we already disallowed one business, they had already voted it in the past to disallow one. And then on the water deal too, I think we ought to have that letter from them, because in another deal in here, we improvised to allow them to change, and we regulate on that size of building, I was told, to have a sprinkler system. Am I right?
And that's sort of where that fire engineer plan came in. So according to standard building code, once you exceed a certain occupancy or exceed a certain square footage of a certain type of occupancy, then a fire suppression system would typically be required. The code does have a provision in it that allows for other means and methods when you can document that it's an equivalent. And so that's basically what we presented, I guess, to the Planning Commission, and that staff feels is acceptable, is with that engineer plan from the fire engineer saying that this far exceeds the other requirements for life safety issues, that what they've done is provided an equivalent level of protection. They are also installing some additional fire alarms, smoke detectors, heat detectors, and some other items to try to make sure that it is as safe as we possibly can. I think this won't be the only one. I'm sure that we'll get where somebody's wanting to do some type of activity out in the county that would normally require fire suppression, and we're not going to usually have that capacity. And so, other communities I've been in have done this fairly often, to where we'll allow an engineer to show that yes, this is equivalent.
Well, the nature of a special use permit is that a blanket policy doesn't cover
Yes.
the situation that may arise, or every situation that may arise.
Yeah.
Is there another event center like this in Franklin County? I know there are some in Anderson County and
Douglas County, is there anything like that in Frank? It'd be interesting to find out what they use for septic system.
Yeah.
Because I know other people are dealing with this. I mean, in this facility, when you look at the pictures of this, it's obviously not a barn. It's not an equipment storage shed. A lot of those other event centers are converted barns.
Yes.
You know, and this is actually more set up as a building for an event center than, but it would be interesting to find out those centers that are in a rural situation. It absolutely makes sense to have the holding tank when you are having a huge influx within 3 hours and then nothing, because how big of a system do you need for a huge influx?
Yeah.
You know, but it might be interesting to find out some of those event centers. The one in, you know, south of or Garnett, and the couple there right north of Wellsville.
And I guess the only thing on the water deal is in the fire pit. That's the reason why we allowed them or recommended that they go out and get a deal, because it was stated that there was not the capable of either to have the water. We don't know that because there's a water tower within a quarter of a mile there and no houses between that water tower and the Boheim Ranch. So that's what I'm saying. If we don't know from the engineers, ask them, would this be in, I mean, not many places like this would be a quarter of a mile from a water tower and no homes in between them.
Yes.
There's not one house except for the house that's on that property.
Yes.
There's no house between there and that water tower.
Well, and the board has, and call it 4 options today. You can accept the staff's recommendation as written. That's going to require a 4/5 vote. You can deny it. You can remand this back to the Planning Commission with special instructions to them, or you can effectively table this and with your own requirements that this body wants to see. And so several things have been brought up. If a majority of you want to see a KDOT traffic study, that would be a reason to table this. If a majority of you would like to see an engineering study from the Rural Water District, that would be a reason to table this. If a majority of you would like Kenny to reach out to what other event facilities have done, that would be a reason to table this. So you don't have to approve or deny. If you remand to the Planning Commission, you need to be very specific about what it is that you want them to do, because they've already approved this, and that was by a 6-2 vote. Is that correct?
6-2, and like Mr. Stottlemyre.
Well, but
There was
6-2.
one missing, 6-5 or 2-5.
There was 2 missing.
Oh, yes, yeah, 2 missing, but we have our one.
And there was 4 of the 8 made comment that they were not in favor of the whole thing at one time or another.
I think the recommendation was a 6-2 because we were one short.
This was from another.
Wait.
This was from the August meeting.
Yeah.
You did an affirmative vote, and it's here for us.
Yeah, two voted against it, but we did also have one person that was gone, and an open seat, I guess. So that's where I'm off. So
Can we change the maximum
capacity? Yeah, I think that would be something that Board of County Commissioners or Planning Commission could say that, yes, you're showing a 300-person occupancy. We want it to be 200 or something like that.
And yet the pictures of the facility, definitely you could probably get.
Yeah, I think what started, so on the occupancy, it started as it's going to be 50, 60 people. Then they had an architect that prepared a code footprint for us. And when he submitted that, it was more like 500 people occupancy, which gave us definitely concern from a number of perspectives. But then that's sort of when we were finally able to get them in touch with a fire engineer, which is part of the reason this took so long. For them to find a company that was able to do this work was a little bit difficult, and just the time for them to come out. But yeah, I would agree with Mr. Brown that if you wanted to. And actually, what I would say is, on the report, my recommendation is to follow the recommendation of the Planning Commission. With the new information that I've received this week from KDOT, my recommendation is probably either to table the item or to remand it back to the Planning Commission, at least for the KDOT issue. And since it seems like there are, other concerns here in regards to the wastewater system or even the occupancy number, I think those would be additional items that you might want to tell the Planning Commission you want them to look at a little bit more, or if you guys just wanted it to come back to you, we could table it for.
Well, let's try and get a sense. Does anyone have any more questions for Kenny, information you might have
I
today?
have one more question. The hours of operation was from 8 to 10 o'clock, is that correct?
I believe so. I think we had that the use would stop at 10 o'clock and the facility would be closed at 11.
So the music stops at 10.
Yeah, music stops at 10.
Closing
The
at
facility closes at 11, mainly to provide some time for them to clean. But that hopefully isn't going to be as impactful to neighbors of having, music going and that type of thing. But yes, that's, I think, what we had on there. So,
No other events would be during the daytime, it'd just be those 3 hours at night?
I think,
Could be.
let me
A family reunion, having it.
I think
in June, or
let me look at my conditions, because I was thinking you meant 8 in the morning till, and I was thinking that's how it was worded, but.
It was 8 to 10, 7 days a week.
Okay, yeah, so I think it was 8 in the morning.
Yeah.
Was, I think, what the intent was.
That's what you have in your
Okay,
conditions.
okay.
8
8
a.m.
a.m. to 10 at night.
Yeah, so it could be any time during the day, just not overnight.
Okay.
Music stopping at 10 with the facility closing fully at 11.
Yep, the hours are 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. That's Clause 11 of Section 2. It's right in your resolution. Clause 10 states that the music shall cease by 10, but hours of operation are 11, 8 a.m. to 11 p.m.
it does seem like the owner is very amenable to doing whatever you ask her to do. So she's willing to work with getting the information that we need.
Yeah, I would assume so. I mean, I know some of the concern, of course, that she's expressed, which to me is probably what we would get from any business owner, is, she has definitely already spent a fair amount of money, going this far with the engineered plan and some of that other stuff. But to me, if these are still concerns that the board has, then to me, there's no reason for us to approve it. We can let her know, we need this additional information before we can really consider this, and probably even more with the protest petition, that's gone out, and concerns that the neighbors have brought up. That might give you even more reason of why you'd want to remand it back for, additional consideration or tabling it for
Who all would
time
know?
where she could be here.
Who all on the board would not be comfortable moving forward absent some additional information? It sounds like you don't want to move forward without a
Yeah,
well-done
and
study.
one other thing I want to add, it's something never been thought about.
Uh-huh.
How many parties a day are they allowed to have? If they're open that many hours, they could have one from 8 to noon and one from noon to 4 and then one from 4 to, that could be 6, 8, 9,000 people there in the daytime.
Well, but the bottle house is the same thing, but they only have very limited, probably 3 or 4 a month, and they're set up.
I don't
they're
see
set up
how
the
they
same
can make
way.
money. I've been in business a long time. They're going to do a lot more business, and Kenny realized it too. They're going to do a lot more business than that for this thing to fly. It's going to flop for me unless you're going to dump a lot of money into it. You plan on just writing it off your taxes or something, because with this kind of facility in that building and all the upgrades and everything, they're going to have to do more than 1 or 2 casual parties now and then. You know, they're going to have to really jump in there. And I know you go up there, and it's mainly because they're out of Johnson County. So I imagine most of their stuff will be coming down out of Johnson County. So there's a lot of those venues that are hard to find in Johnson County. And a lot of them, they can't even, they're booked up solid. You know, so I look for this to be booked up solid too. Because that's just what people want to do, get out of the city and, you know, get away from everything. And so I think it's going to be a heck of a lot bigger deal if it happened than anybody puts their finger on.
Who else would not be comfortable moving forward absent some additional information?
Well, I'm not comfortable.
Okay. So it doesn't look like we have a path for approval, so that would lead us down to either denial or remand with instructions to the Planning Commission. And I mean, it goes without saying, that's not a way to not make a decision. We do need to send it down with clear instructions or table it and leave it at this level, but we need more information. So do we want to?
I think it needs to go back to the planning board.
Well, I guess, but the other thing I would encourage you guys to think about is, are you going to waste the planning commission's time? Because at least a couple of you aren't willing to take their recommendation today. And I would just ask just make sure you're being honest with yourself, because I don't want to send it back down. Like if there are just a couple of no's, like we're just not for this, I would rather not send it back down to them and have them do all of this work, bring it back up to you so that we just say no again.
Essentially trying to get them to make a decision. You don't want to.
Like,
it's not.
Another option to consider is if a couple of you have concerns, or several of you have concerns, as the case may be, then let Kenny work with the applicant directly instead of remanding it back to the Planning Commission. Let Kenny work with the applicant, bring the applicant in here so that the applicant can address the five of you, and then see if we can get to, you know, a vote of either approval or denial.
What is this person going to do with this building if it wasn't something like this? I mean, what are they going to do? Make it a chicken house? I mean, that makes no sense.
I mean, they could do storage. It could just be a shop building. I mean, now granted, you have 2 bathroom facilities that have like 6-8 toilets a piece in them, and, you know, a little kitchen area, but, you know, most of it is a large open space. So it is definitely would appear to fit the use that's being proposed, but yet I would completely agree with Mr. Brown. It was something I tried to express, I think, to the Planning Commission as well, as we were tabling this item a number of times, that, you know, if they knew that this just wasn't the right use and the right location, there's no reason to make them jump through hoops to spend a few thousand more dollars on another study. You know, if this just isn't the right location, then, you know, I'd say just deny it and we're done. But if you do think that this is something that could be appropriate if they address these concerns that the board has, then I would say remanding would be the best option.
I would like to see it move forward for a couple of reasons. One, maybe though to start with a smaller, you know, limit that to 100 or something. But that 2 year, the thing that when you put that 2 years in, and let's give it a try for 2 years.
Yeah.
Because at the end of that, if this isn't working, if there's a lot of noise complaints, and you would think that as the owner, if there's a lot of complaints coming to the county and it's being passed on to them, they're gonna make changes.
Yeah.
Or they're going to know that this is not going to extend past 2 years. So they're going to have to work really hard to make sure that the owners around are happy.
Yes.
Because otherwise they're going to lose their special use permit in 2 years. So I would think that would give them a lot of, you know, motivation.
Yeah. And I would say those concerns are often raised. And I think even one of our planning commissioners said that he had, like the weekend before, went to a wedding at a venue like this in a different county, And I think they might have actually rented the facility because I think it was their child, but they kept expressing that you cannot be loud. If you are loud, then you are putting in possible revocation of our business, and so they continue to express that. But it is, I've had a few of these over in other jurisdictions. It's noise and traffic are, of course, the biggest issues.
Can we put a special thing on there that the gathering has to remain in the building? I mean, so that there is not an outside tent, an additional,
I think, so how I've worded it right now is that the use has to be operated in the manner that they described in their narrative and according to the site plan. So I would say, based off of that, we would have some ability to say it needs to stay inside. Now, I went out to the site and it has some really nice patios, and as Pat and I were walking around looking at the building, it was like, well, shoot, this would be a nice place to put cornhole or something out to the side, or horseshoes or something, and have something going on outside. But yeah, I mean, we could say that all use has to be inside. All of these are going to be enforcement issues that are going to be somewhat difficult. I mean, even the maximum sound, 70 decibels.
What's the closest neighbor?
The closest neighbor would be Mr. Burton, which is just to the west. He bought the house that used to be part of this, and it got split off. So he's the closest one. He has just expressed concern in regards to making sure that there was screening and that there was issues that were dealing with noise. He was only there at the first meeting, so I've never really gotten to talk to him, but that's all, and he was not one that signed the protest petition. GP George's is probably the next closest neighbor, and he's on the north side. He had definitely concerns that he expressed in regards to the traffic. He's going to be more impacted on the traffic. The lights are going to be shining towards his house. He's spoken, I think, every meeting.
So since, I wholeheartedly agree with the things Diane said. I think being a 2-year trial, it would be a very safe, thing to try. But it doesn't look like we have a path forward for approval today. So that being said, Don, Roy, you wanted to get more information before you'd potentially be comfortable with approval?
Well, I'm comfortable just on the sanitary system. We're doing something that a private person can't do if they wanted to move here. And the house they were going to move in had a holding tank, would require them to put in a brand new system. And here we're waiving that requirement, and I don't think that's quite fair to do it for one outfit and not for another. So we might be setting a precedent in the future for people coming here to the county and say, well, we're just going to use a holding tank. And
I got to ask, absent the holding tank, if they were to put in a lagoon or a permanent system, would you be potentially in favor of approval as is?
Well, I'm still concerned for the neighbors because we've gotten complaints from the neighbors, and I don't think it's appropriate for the neighborhood to have a commercial operation in their neighborhood. So it kind of goes against the idea of sustaining a rural atmosphere in the neighborhood too.
The building's already there. Like it.
I'm just trying to get I do feel for the applicant who's dumped some money into it and potentially looking at dumping more, I think they need a path forward or an answer. So even if we told them, I guess maybe we would have 4 votes for approval if you were to install a lagoon or type system like that. But if you, even with that condition, wouldn't be for it, then it's a moot point. If it just doesn't, I think we owe them an answer.
And that's where I'm at. I mean, if one thing that I would strongly encourage the board not to do is we do not want to ask them to put in a septic if the answer is still no.
Yeah.
And to get to yes, we have to have, Kansas law requires now that 4 of you vote yes. And for those of you who are not in favor of this today, if you will never be in favor of this, like today is the day to say that so that we can just be done. Because I don't think it's probably equitable, and I've heard the word precedent a lot today. I don't think we want to set the precedent of asking applicants to dump money into property only to turn around and tell them no. And so I think that is what I would ask the board to strongly consider. If there is the opportunity to make this happen, then remanding to the Planning Commission is an option, and let's talk about what it is that we really need to see. Like, what is it that would change our minds? Is it an engineering study? Is it? But if as you said, Roy, if you just believe it doesn't fit the character of the community and never will, then that's something that you probably, if that's just how you feel and you're there, I think then we make that decision today.
I live a mile and a half on gravel off of pavement. Across from me is a commercial facility that is open 6 days a week, all day. And there is traffic all day. I mean, a lot of traffic that goes to that commercial facility. I live 300 yards away from the facility. I asked my husband, I said, has it ever bothered you that you live across from that? And he said, no. It is, you know, and sometimes when it's deer hunting season, there would be people in there 24 hours a day, you know, lights and people drop, you know, and there's cows back there mooing because, yeah, they're being held. But anyway, for 5 years, you know, I've lived out there, and they do, we do have dust control in front of us, which makes a huge difference in that area. It was there when we moved in, yeah.
So Roy, would you be an affirmative vote yes if one of the conditions was installing a permanent sanitation?
I probably still wouldn't be for it.
Okay, then we just
There's
don't.
a whole bunch of neighbors that don't like it.
Okay, then that just, we're eliminating options, so it doesn't look like approval's going to be. Dawn, is there any other information that might
There's
change
all
your mind?
kinds of holes in this thing, so I'm not gonna bore everybody. I got several pages of stuff I could add. I just go into the main topics. We don't know, I mean, you know, everything's done when it's like Derek said, we said, it's done on, this thing is so, every meeting I went to is all different. I mean, they come up with different issues and different numbers, and I think it's going to just keep going that way.
So
I'm not in favor of the septic system. I'm not in favor. We don't know how many events a day they could have. We're not, you know, and we haven't done, like I know KDOT has issues because they were told one number in the beginning and now a lot bigger number now, and they feel that there's issues. So I'd have a hard time voting for it at this time.
At this time, but I guess what we're trying to flush out is there any information from a KDOT traffic study, a water study, viewing other facilities that might change your mind, or is it just?
I just don't think it's the proper place for it right there.
All right, that's fine. So.
And another thing, you won't get Mr. Burton probably make any. He's a planning and zoning director, so he's not going to take any issues with it.
Yes.
Because that's what he does. That's what he does.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm not trying to change your mind. Just trying to get a clear answer for the applicant and not kick it down the road. So, it looks like denial is going to be probably our only path forward. If anything you need to add, Jared?
No, I'm just trying to think through.
We need 4/5 approval, and it doesn't look like we have a way.
What I'm thinking through is if part of me maybe thinks it's cleaner if there are a couple of you that think that this is an acceptable use as is, then you make the motion to approve, and then we just let it fail, so that there is a motion on the record, so that we've made a decision here today. Somebody made a motion, it maybe gets seconded or it doesn't, but if there's not, if 4 of you are against it, then make the motion to deny. But I'm not sensing 4 of you are. I'm sensing maybe a 3-2, and I would just say somebody make the motion to approve and then let it get denied.
Makes sense, that's clean, and the outcome's the same, so would anyone care to make a motion to approve?
I would make an affirmative motion with with a limit,
You can attach a condition.
a limited capacity of 100, 150, 100? I don't know.
150 won't be a big
150?
wedding, would it?
Huh?
150 probably a big wedding.
Yeah, okay, so I with amended capacity limit of 150.
So we have a motion with an amended capacity limit of 150.
I'd second that.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
No.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
No.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Chair Waymeyer?
Yes.
So the motion fails for lack of a supermajority.
All right,
Thanks, Kenny.
we worked our way through that one.
I will,
Well, thank you for all your hard work.
And your
Guys, thanks
planning
for-
commission.
yeah, feel sorry for them.
Our second item of business is looks like a fairly standard rezoning application. It's, Hyatt. Rezoning application is in 1930.
Yes, so this request is to rezone 5.4 acres of this property to the RE district in order for them to be able to divide off the agricultural land that's associated with this to sell it. I believe my understanding is, at least at this time, they're planning on continuing to own the house. This is located just to the southeast of the county landfill, is sort of where this request is located at. Probably the only thing I would really note on this request is there is a pretty significant amount of floodplain on the property. The new maps probably make it even a little bit worse. But there is a little bit of land on the west side to where if their septic system fails, they should hopefully be able to put some type of system in there. That was my primary concern in regards to this request, is that I would have preferred it to be a little bit of a slightly larger parcel, going a little bit farther west, just to make sure that there was absolutely sufficient space for a wastewater system. They can always put in a lagoon. It's a big enough property. It just requires a floodplain development permit. It's a little bit more of an onerous process to go through. But the Planning Commission did make a recommendation of approval of the request. And so I would recommend to the County Commissioner that you consider their recommendation of approval.
Floodplain maps definitely give us a lot more considerations.
Yes.
Questions for Kenny on this one? Is there a motion to approve rezoning application 2110-1930?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Chair Waymeyer?
Yes. Third item of business is a rezoning application and a special use permit.
So on this one, I would note that the applicants are in the audience if you have any questions for them. This request is a two-part request. First, to rezone a property that's currently zoned RE Residential Estate District to the C2 Highway Commercial District. And then after that, they are requesting for a special use permit to allow for the operation of a truck and freight terminal the rezoning has to happen. If it doesn't happen, then the other one basically just automatically fails in regards to this request. My recommendation to the Planning Commission on this, so this property is located at the interchange of I-35 and Tennessee Road. Our comprehensive plan does sort of show this area as being a spot that we would anticipate commercial development occurring. And so for the C2 Highway Commercial District, I did make a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission for this application. But I did make a recommendation of denial of the special use permit, as I didn't feel like the more industrial type activity that would be a truck and freight terminal would be appropriate at that location. There are a number of different concerns in regards to truck traffic and noise, dust, and other items that are of concern and that are definitely included in my staff report that was provided to the Planning Commission. And so my recommendation was somewhat of a split decision in regards to, I do think that with the comp plan showing that area as being commercial and some of the other uses that are going there, that the commercial use is an appropriate use there. The truck and freight terminal is more of an industrial activity, but we do have a provision that allows it as a special use permit in the C2 district. But in those situations, we have the ability to look at, does it fit the character of the neighborhood? Are there other conditions that we need to do again that would make this be consistent? And I just don't feel like this is probably the best location to me. If there was some more kind of truck stop or something in front, and this was sort of behind it, then to me in the C2 district that probably becomes more appropriate. Having this type of activity at sort of one of the more visible corners of where we're wanting commercial is a little bit more difficult in my mind. The Planning Commission, after hearing the request, actually made a recommendation of just denial of both the rezoning and the special use permit. So that is, I think, what the Planning Commission has currently recommended to you. I would note, as staff report, the applicants are currently using a property farther south on Tennessee Road for a similar operation. It's a smaller parcel. The county has been in contact with them in regards to it doesn't comply with our zoning regulations. This request partly came out of that, of trying to move that use that is in violation to a property where it would maybe be considered to be appropriate. And so we will still have that issue that we have to deal with if this request does get denied. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And again, the applicants are here in the audience and could talk to it. I guess I would note a number of property owners adjacent to this did come and present their concerns in regards to the request. Just because it is a little bit unique, I would just note that one of our planning commissioners does own property that's in the notification area, and so he did recuse himself from the discussion and step down from the planning commission. But he also had concerns in regards to it and spoke, which does match what our bylaws say, that they just need to recuse themselves, not take part in the decision process and the discussion, but it does allow them, because they have an interest in it, to be able to speak to that as part of the public hearing. So,
any of the neighbors in support or all?
I don't remember any of them being in support. I think.
Describe a truck and freight terminal.
Do we want to bring up the applicant maybe? And then we can follow up with Kenny on any questions? Is that all right?
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what it exactly.
Good morning. For the clerk, we need to state your name and address.
Carrie Orender, 295 East 2300 Road in Edgerton.
Good morning.
Jody Warney, 3707 Tennessee Road.
All right. So you want to explain to us what kind of operation you'd potentially be looking at?
Basically, what this is just a storage for intermodal containers that are on chassis. So basically, they're just coming from the B&N and being stored at this facility until they're able to go and get delivered, whether it's Walmart, whether it's Hallmark. And a lot of times these come back empty until they're able to go back to the Burlington Northern to get shipped back. So it's just a storage facility for the trailers only.
How long have you been in this business or operated?
Just over a year.
Okay. You have an existing facility. I understand you don't have a special use permit.
No, not currently. Basically, as they're coming off of I-35 and turning onto Tennessee Road, it's probably about 300 feet is about all they're traveling on that county road before entering the entrance of this property.
Why? So I mean, this use is related to warehousing and in the intermodal. Why would you bring trailer and chassis down here to store as opposed to closer to the facilities?
There's nothing available by the facility for this.
Do you believe this facility would be allowed up there? A gravel lot?
I don't think they're allowing any kind of facility of any kind in that county.
Warehouses, obviously, but
Yeah, you can have warehouses, but you can't have a parking lot. So there's no facility in Johnson County, nothing in Miami. So this would actually be the closest one.
any jobs, full-time jobs?
Yes, it'd create jobs and it'd create a lot of revenue. With 17 acres, we could store quite a bit on there. And if it could be an overflow lot from Burlington Northern, that'd be $150 a day to store them.
So you have a full-time employee there?
Yeah, we would, yes.
Okay.
Is it catty corner from Buckview? Is that the corner?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. It'd be across from the Frito-Lay, Katy Corner from the Buckview.
In your application, you said you'd knock out the terraces. Do you have any plans for
No,
stormwater?
the terraces are maybe 2 feet high.
Sure.
So just kind of knock them down just a little bit.
They're there for
and
erosion
that's it.
prevention. Do you have any plans for stormwater control?
We weren't going to do any kind of landscaping. No anything like that. We're just going to put large rock on it so that water can go through. They recommend that we didn't really need one. So, as far as the pipeline's concerned out there, there's 2 pipelines. One of them's defunct and is not even operational and is open. The other one I've talked to, they said as long as these containers are on wheels and up off the ground, not sitting on the ground, that they can be on this pipeline. That's not an issue at all. The issue is if the pipeline ever were to crack, if the gas would seep up and then seep inside one of these things, somebody opened it, could create a spark and explosion. But all these trailers are, nobody opens them, and they are 4 feet off the ground. So any wind, breeze, anything, if there were ever a leak, that wouldn't be an issue. And there are no neighbors that any of these trucks are driving by. They would exit and enter on I-35, and lucky if it's about 300 feet to the entrance off of state property to the county. So we don't believe that it'd impact any neighbors whatsoever.
So your existing facility, you don't have a special use permit if you applied for one?
We have, yes.
On this one, but
Right.
on the previous one?
No.
No?
I did talk to Larry briefly before about it, and I've talked with Kenneth here about it. What we're trying to do is just move it, and then problem
place where it can't
solved.
be compliant.
And as far as I was told, that this piece of property, that's what its intended use is for, and for a parking lot. So that's all we want to do is just add rock, and then facilitate that business there.
All right.
Yeah, none of the trailers are gonna be flammable. Government required.
Anything that carries a hazardous placard?
Right,
Yeah.
so there wouldn't be any of that.
I do know that one of the other issues too was weight. You know, people were concerned about the weight in these things, and somebody brought up, 80,000 pounds, this and that, but they're all legal. You can't haul these things overweight.
There are some intermodal facilities where you can transport them within a certain distance if they are overweight, and this wouldn't qualify is what you're saying.
I wouldn't think that qualified here.
Yeah.
You're going to have an employee, you're going to build a structure, have...
There's already an existing structure there, so we just work out of that. So we wouldn't be building any structures whatsoever.
Just thinking that Wellsville is developing so fast and so, and then this is the next intersection, the only other intersection between Wellsville and that I would love to see that intersection be left to, as the county expands, put a hotel, or whatever else there. A parking lot on that corner is probably not my vision.
Right. But with the two pipelines crossing this property, it was my understanding that we weren't supposed to build any structures on this property. So.
Anybody else? Any questions for the applicant? Well, we got them up here. Them up here.
There's also not going to be any lighting.
Okay.
And dust control was brought up by one neighbor, but we have several solutions for dust control, including water trucks. We also have the chlorium dioxide, I believe it's called, with the flakes. There's several things that are out there to make sure that there's no dust.
All right. And that's something you'd be willing to
absolutely
have it attached?
Yeah, we'll take care of that. There's no issues of dust.
As a consideration. That's been an issue in the past, hasn't it? All right. Well, I think that's it for now. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Follow-up info from Kenny. Questions?
I would just sort of note real quick, when the applicants did come in and meet with me originally and sort of express that they were interested in this property, what my recommendation was is, this type of facility really is more of an industrial use. And while they could have applied for it as an industrial zoning, I told them, from my perspective, I didn't see that was appropriate or that it matched our comprehensive plan. But I did tell them that, the C2 zoning district does have this provision that would allow for this. And so the only way that I could see this even possibly going forward was going through this process, doing the rezoning, going through the special use permit. Even with that, I still told them I thought this was going to be a difficult issue because I didn't know that this was going to be considered as an appropriate use at this location, even though we can consider it as a special use. And so I just wanted to let you guys know that's sort of where this did come from. They definitely did work with me on making sure that it was possible, but I tried to, express some concern. That
Since you have a favorable view of the rezoning, but perhaps the special use permit may have some difficulties, do we want to take it as two different items and consider would that be?
Well, yeah, those would need to be two separate motions, but to be clear, Kenny, and your specific action requested, you're asking for denial of both.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I am not opposed to what the Planning Commission's recommendation was.
Okay.
They recommended denial of both requests. I did want to state, though, that, my original recommendation to them was approval of the rezoning, denial of the special use.
Okay, that's what I was reading, but yeah.
And if that's your recommendation, that's okay.
Yes.
Like, we can do that. You guys can absolutely.
Owns the land.
De Brabander,
So they actually could,
he signed the application for them on their behalf and allowed them to be the applicants on this. And so I haven't been able to get a hold of him this week to
So would they be renting the land from him then if we approved
I
it?
believe they would be purchasing the
it?
property from them. And I would note that there are at least 3 facilities that I know in the intermodal area that I would say are similar, more intense than what they're proposing. TSL, Arrowhead Intermodal, and I can't remember the third business, but there are 3 properties mostly used for cargo container storage, so they're usually
They don't have
moving
chassis
the
under them.
containers and actually stacking them high. But they also sometimes do some just trailer storage as well. So there are, and that would be a similar type of use, again, a little bit more intense than what they're.
Is it fair to say that if this facility was proposed or built up by the warehouses, it would require a hard surface road,
Yes.
water retention,
Yes.
screening,
Yes. Yeah.
probably lighting?
Full pavement, at least hot rolled asphalt, and then you'd probably have to have concrete dolly pads poured into that so that when you don't have the trailers hooked up, they're not going to punch through the asphalt. I know TSL Intermodal, when I was up there, they purchased their own paving machine and their own guys paved the whole lot, and it was like 12 inches of concrete that they put down. But again, they were stacking 4 high.
Yeah, yeah.
They probably require lighting also. I mean,
Yeah. So they have lighting. So there's some other stuff, and then
Fencing
we
for
definitely
theft.
did
Yeah.
berming, landscaping, other things too. So.
And Ian, you've touched on this, and I believe that the 5 of you know this, but I do want to get it on the record. It is this board's responsibility, obviously, to consider individual applications, but it is also this board's responsibility, and hopefully following recommendations from Kenny, to look at the long-term development of Franklin County and what that looks like. And we know Franklin County is growing, and we know that it is growing along the I-35 corridor. So just make sure that you're keeping that in mind when you're doing this analysis. Is this the type of development that you want in this location? It's easy to get wrapped into an individual application and kind of lose sight of the 30,000-foot view, but this board is still responsible for the 30,000-foot view, and so I would encourage you to keep that in
did
mind.
have a question because they mentioned that there's 2 pipelines there. So what do you feel? Is that developable? Is it? What could be done there?
It is definitely has constraints on it with the pipelines. My understanding is, you would not be allowed to build any structure definitely within the easements of the pipelines, and any development over the pipelines would definitely need to be worked at with the pipeline companies. If you were going to pave over the pipeline, that's going to be something that they're going to be concerned with as well. I do believe that there's probably enough land available outside of the pipeline company's easements that somebody could build something there. Again, you'd want to take into consideration that there are 2 major pipelines going through there, but I think you could, somebody could build a structure there and meet those requirements, and you'd have some places that would require sort of open space to keep the pipelines available. The one pipeline on the north end of the property, I would say doesn't probably impact it quite as much because it's all the way up at the northern point, so it's starting to get pretty skinny back there. So I don't know that it would have a huge impact on the development of this property. The southern one is more through the main portion of the lot and would create more difficulties on how you would do that development. I don't know from a business perspective how comfortable any type of commercial use would be in regards to having 2 pipelines on their property and building. That could be another issue that we would deal with on this parcel. But, another item that I did note to the Planning Commission in regards to this, I mean, as part of this request, they're not really proposing any construction of buildings that would impact the ability of this property to be repurposed in the future for another commercial use. And so from that perspective, it was sort of, well, we're not substantially negatively impacting the possibility of it being developed, but still using for trailer storage, once it is approved, then it would be able to continue.
To me, that was the one redeeming thing about it is remove the trailers and you really don't have a detriment to deal with. It's ready for future development, but.
And I did in the staff report, if the Planning Commission recommended approval, I had a large number of conditions that I was recommending that they would consider. So some of the items that were brought up in regards to drainage plan, specifying some of the things that they wouldn't be parking trucks here overnight, some of those things. So,
any other questions for Kenny? We're going to start looking at. So under specific action requested, it does say denial for the rezoning. Is that?
I would still say my recommendation as staff has been approval of the rezoning, and I would say part of that is, we do anticipate this area being commercial, so the property being rezoned to commercial would limit the use of that property to commercial uses. Right now, if somebody bought that property and wanted to develop it for residential, they could build a house on it. Whether that impacts anybody's decision or not, I don't know. But, this is sort of what we're anticipating for this area is commercial.
Fits with our comprehensive plan, doesn't it?
Yes.
Kenny, when we spoke about this week, you indicated you were going to reach out to the owner to see if they would still want to move forward with the rezoning absent this use. What did you hear from them?
And I haven't been able to get a hold of them at this point. So
I would say we might better deny it then, because if the special use fails, the sale of the property fails, you now have a piece of property with completely different use.
Yeah, and that's
make sure
what I
the
would say.
agent wants it to be that way.
I wasn't able to get back in touch with them to verify what their opinion is on that.
If they want to rezone it, he can submit an application.
It looks like it'll have a favorable view going forward, so, okay. I think it'd be better for the owner as well. Was there a motion to deny rezoning application 2110 and 1931 to rezone the approximately 17.3 acres from RE residential estate to C2 commercial district? Or a motion to approve? Is there a motion regarding this rezoning?
I'll make a motion.
Motion to what?
Denial.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson? Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Chair Baymeyer?
Yes. Do we need to address the special use permit still?
Yeah, I would still recommend.
Yep.
All right. Is there a motion regarding the special use permit, application 2110-1932, for the operation of a truck and freight terminal?
Make a motion to deny.
Need a second?
Second.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson? Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Chair Baymeyer?
Yes. Our fourth item is rezoning application.
This is very similar to other requests that we've had. A request by the Meltons to rezone approximately 30 acres from A1 to the RE district. I would note on this property, I believe the parcels on either the east or the west side are already zoned RE. So while I usually make statements in regards to spot zoning and that type of thing, this one's actually sort of filling in a spot that still had its E2 zoning district. So it's more in compliance with the existing zoning that's on adjacent properties. Staff did recommend approval of the request, and the Planning Commission did also make a recommendation of approval to the Board of County Commissioners. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
This one's pretty straightforward. Motion to approve application, rezoning application 2110-1933.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Stoudemire?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Chair Waymeyer?
Yes. Thanks for your time, Kenny.
I'd like to thank Kenny. He put a lot of hours into this, so, yeah, I know his meetings went till 10:30 at night. I know at least 2 of them did, so he put a lot into all of this, no matter how we went or how we voted. He did as thorough as he could possibly do.
Thanks a lot.
All right. And for our 5th item of business would be a EMS activity report. Good morning, Christy.
Good morning. So it's been looking back at prior records, it was pretty evident that you had been used to getting a monthly activity report from EMS. So just in full transparency, going to start that back again.
Sure.
So the first 2 pieces that we have were things that I've been told that the auditor always like to have signatures on. And the first one is the adjustments, and the second one is what we've sent to collections. If I could just take a minute to explain what we're looking at that encompasses the adjustments. You should have a report for October of 2021. It's a 2-page report. On the second of that page, it itemizes out all the adjustments. What the adjustments are is it's actually the difference on what they pay us versus what we're allowed to bill. So when you get a statement from going to the doctor, there's always a portion that you're not allowed to charge the patient. And that is what we're looking at with these adjustments, whether it's through Medicare or Medicaid, private insurance, some workers' compensation. That's what we have the total for with this. Moving on. With the collections report in October of 2021, we had some staffing changes within the billing department, and it was decided that just to wait and get things a little bit more steady and more secured within the department before we start sending anybody out to collections. So collections are 0.
How are your status zeros and your move-ups?
Status zeros and move-ups, I'm sorry, I do not have those included in this report.
Okay, I just did your sense, are you?
But we're busy. We're very busy. Compared to what they were last year, I am not sure. I can start providing you that information if you would like it.
Especially if it causes you more work you don't need to. Just kind of your sense of if it's getting, it's growing, you're falling further
growing.
Behind. Yeah.
Yes. That's one of the things we'll look at next, too, is just the activities that we've done compared to last year. We're definitely busier.
Alrighty.
We're still sending a lot of people out of the county, transporting them to...
Not as many as we were, I don't believe. But that's in the report as well, too.
Yep. That last attachment.
Right. So as far as activities, you can see just compared to activities per district, 2021 and 2020. 2021 is a pretty blue color. You can see particularly Ottawa South that number has grown exponentially. In October alone, 130 calls versus last year at this time, we were sitting at 96 calls. And most of the districts did go up as well. I do have that broken out in calls by day per district as well. And you can see with particularly Ottawa South, we're up to a little over 4 calls a day just in that district alone, which is a full call more than what we were this time last year. Do have a pie chart too that shows where the majority of our activity is for October. Roughly 36% came out of that Ottawa South district. Another thing to highlight too is 14.4% of our calls were from transfers out of our local hospital. Just difference in call types compared from last year. We did have a decline in medical emergencies, but we had a very sharp increase in sick calls. Sick calls are things that would come in through our 911 dispatch center that really have vague complaints that they can't pinpoint. And looking back and doing some further investigation, these sick calls have been attributed with the increase in COVID. Receiving hospitals for October, we took 167 of our patients to Advent Health Ottawa. The next highest number was 79, and that was the number of patients that we went and saw that actually refused our service. This can be attributed to our population is growing in age. Lots of falls, need help getting up, and there really are no injuries. They just need our assistance to get up off the floor, sometimes even up off the toilet.
Baby boomers continuing to age.
Exactly. The next thing with that, the next or busiest hospital that we transport to would be Advent Health in Shawnee Mission. The next one is our call times, and you can see that they kind of peak between noon and about 7 o'clock at night. That is the busiest time for EMS. And then last is our level of care that was provided. There is a difference between ALS and BLS. So ALS is advanced life support. So that would be something where we had to do an intervention, where we had to start an IV or put them on the monitor, give some type of medication, versus basic life support. We really just come and take a set of vitals and you're okay. You'll note that in October, we had no BLS calls. Everybody that we billed for, we billed for at an ALS level, which just shows that our patients are getting sicker. During COVID, they forego or didn't go to the doctor. People have become sicker, and our calls are showing that they're more higher acuity than they were last year. The special charges would be either educational programs that we put in, mainly CPR classes.
I can just remember it ain't been that many years ago. It was 5 calls a day.
When I first started, we averaged about 5 calls
Yeah.
a day.
Yeah, I can remember getting reports, and it was 5 a day. And then when we expanded to the third station, we were only doing a half a call a day up there. Now I see it's over a call a day. So.
Right. Now we're averaging, at least overall for October, we averaged almost 12 calls a day versus this time last year it was right about 10. And we're up, it looks roughly about 300 calls for the year as compared to last year.
I know before COVID, we were trying to start educational, like when you have calls to the same residents, maybe, you know,
Right.
and have somebody go out and maybe try to educate them on, I don't know if during COVID did that kind of go away? Are you still trying to do that?
Initially, when the initial COVID response happened, that did go away. However, we are starting to phase that back in. We do have a community education coordinator that has been quite active, and she's showing some success with being able to go out and educate patients on this is when you call an ambulance, or particularly working with home health to make some accommodations to make life easier for them so they don't have to keep repeatedly calling EMS. Yes.
Tell us about your staffing.
So I'd love to tell you about our staffing. When I started or took over as chief in August, we had 4 paramedic vacancies, and paramedics are a pretty hot commodity right now. I'm very happy to say that as of today, we only have 1 vacancy. So we have been able to hire 3 paramedics in that time. Staffing looks better than it has within the past 2 years.
Looking at this report, there's a lot of data. There has to probably be a pretty significant amount of time for you to collect all that and put it together and do
That's
reports.
correct.
And if we were to put a dollar amount on that, these reports aren't free. Would it be easier for you if we looked at going to a quarterly report? Is that?
It doesn't, the data still will come from the same place, and I'll still enter it. It's up to you. If you would prefer a quarterly report, I can do that, but I am happy with monthly as well.
the framework's in place, so it's just.
As far as her being,
Yeah.
one day a month, and I mean, it's largely full confidence you're on top of your department and it's in excellent shape from everything I've heard. But
Thank you.
would we be okay going to quarterly reports from EMS or?
It's all right, as long as there's nothing serious going on that we need to update,
Sure.
for some reason.
I'm glad to see it, period, because we haven't seen one for a while, so yeah, it's nice.
We did have just one other thing of note. We did have a little bit of a decline in revenue for the month of October, which is attributing to the turnover that we had in that office.
Running more overtime?
Just specifically with our office manager.
Oh, okay,
with
gotcha.
her resignation
Billings,
and
gotcha.
having to hire a new one and get her trained, so.
We'll keep our eye on that to see if it's a trend, but we don't believe at all that it will be. And if you look at our total deposits, like we're already over what we budgeted for this year. So the fact that we're about 35 under our monthly target, it doesn't really say. I mean, we're about 100,000 over already, 100,000 over what our annual goal was, and we've got 2 months left. So
Great. We will need a motion to approve the October 2021 adjustments and collection reports.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes.
Chair Waymeyer?
Yes. Thank you, Christy. Sure. I'll sign them and then, you need me to give them to the clerk or you want them back?
You can give them to the clerk and I'll just give them to
Okay, thanks. You're doing a great job. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Staff reports.
yeah, and Christy, you might hang out for just a second. I don't know that this will lead to questions, and certainly there's no action that's needed today. But we've been talking about growth in EMS for quite some time. I mean, the call volume just continues to go up. And with the population continuing to age, we don't anticipate that trend reversing. And so this is among the things I would ask that you keep in the back of your mind as we do our long-term planning. I mean, you would know far better than I, and we may be a ways from there yet, but adding another truck, at some point, if this continues to increase, may be something we have to look at. And then, of course, you get into housing the truck, and it's just, no discussion needed at this point in time, but it's one of those long-range things that I think we definitely need to stay on top of. So, group of us, I told you here several weeks ago, we were putting together an employee retention committee. Purpose of that committee is just to brainstorm ideas about things that we can do, because we believe that's going to be easier to keep the folks that we have, because recruiting and getting people here it's just a super competitive market. I'm very happy with that group. I think we've got a lot of good ideas. Some of them are pretty orthodox, others are not. Monday, we have a study session, and I think we're going to discuss some changes to the pay plan and maybe the first round of ideas that the retention committee has discussed. And so just to kind of give you a little example, some of them are little things like giving raises to our part-time employees. That's something that we haven't done. You talk to Paul Bean, he would tell you that part-time employees may be something we have to look at a lot more as we move forward. We've talked about boomers a couple times this meeting. That may be a way to pull some of them back into the market, is offering them part-time employment. So we want to make sure we're taking care of our part-time employees as well. Looking at raising the top of the ranges. So we've got a number of employees that are just maxed out. So they get bonuses at the end of the year. Well, we know that it's costing us more to get employees in the door. So when you're paying people towards the middle of their range, when you get them in the door, they don't have as much room to grow, so bumping up the top of that range doesn't cost us money today. I mean, the increase comes over time as their salary, but we'd either pay it out as a bonus or an increase in salary. So, and we'll have some other changes, but that group, I think we're off to a good start. And then the last thing, we didn't meet last week because a group of us went down to Wichita to a leadership training that we received through a Pathways grant. Certainly, Casey, Paul, Janet could all speak to this as well. I think it was pretty helpful. I think that it was very academic, and I'm not, I'm pretty practical. I'm less of an academic and more, and I think the challenge anytime you go through training like that is, okay, how do we practically apply some of these? But I think it was an eye-opener in some ways for some of our staff, and so I think it was a good use of county time. And that's really all I have today.
Great. Casey?
Morning, Commissioners. I have several little things. So COVID numbers are back up. We are seeing long lines again for testing, and we're working with OFP to mitigate that issue because there's been some issues in the parking lot because of those long lines. So we're working on that. We have had some small changes. Our courier system to get the tests from here to the state lab has changed. The state was funding a different courier system for a long time, and now it is a state courier system that they're using. So we've had a few hiccups, a few issues, but the state is getting that all worked out. We're staying on it. But one thing to note is that our patients who are getting tested, it's taking them longer to get their test results than it was before. So just so people know, instead of like 12 to 24 hours, it's taking more like 24 to 48 hours to get their test results. Because that changed a little bit, we have made some instructions for people on how to read their test results and what to expect to get their test results, because they do have to log into a system and it's a little bit different. So when somebody comes to get tested, they'll get a sheet that tells them what they need to do, and so that's changed just a little bit. I think that's all for COVID. Does anybody have any questions on that?
I have grandkids who got their shot, not at the county, but at a pharmacy, and when they went to get their second one, it was not available, and they don't know when it will be available. Are we having, I'm like...
So the county had 2 different kids clinics so far, and the first of that clinic got their second doses last night, and the next one is next week for second doses. We have not had issues with that, but I couldn't speak to if they've had issues ordering going forward, because when we ordered our first doses, we also saved the second doses. We get them all at once and save them for second doses, and that's just what we've done throughout the entire response.
Would you have a recommendation on what somebody would do if there was second dose is not available?
Yes, try. You could call the health department. Next Tuesday, when we're having second doses, there may be some extras available. I don't know off the top of my head if there are any. So that's one option. I don't know where they got it, but there's several options in town that do have pediatric doses. Dr. Coster's office here in the Annex building is scheduling pediatric doses, and then I know Walmart has them. The Health Partnership Clinic downtown has them, and then I believe Kramer and Auburn Pharmacy both have them. Auburn is in Wellsville, where they have a Baldwin Clinic and a Garnett Clinic, so they're not just in Franklin County, but I know that they have pediatric doses as well. Those would be our suggestions, but call the health department. They should be able to help you out.
All right. I just have one question. This new requirements on having a negative test 24 hours before you fly or something like that. Does our health department have that capability of giving that test or getting results back?
It takes 24 hours to get a result back.
So are you asking if we will test people for that?
Yeah, I mean, can't people come to the health department
Yeah,
and get that kind of deal?
They call and they have to have an appointment. We do testing by appointment only, but somebody calls, late in the afternoon, we're going to get them in the next morning. And that's how it's been throughout our entire response. We don't just ask people to drive up. We do make appointments, but if they call and let us know that they need a test for traveling purposes or a test to get a procedure done at the hospital or whatever it may be, and they need it in a certain time frame, because our system has changed a little bit, we can't, if they don't give us enough time, we can't guarantee that they're going to have the results in time, because we have no control over how long it takes the lab to run their test results. But we'll do our best to work with them and tell them when they should come get tested in order to get the results at the right time.
Then they get some kind of certificate then or something?
Yeah, that's what this sheet tells them when they get there, how they get the results and how they'll be able to share those with whoever they need to share it with.
Isn't the doctor's office still requiring COVID tests before you come in? And you get those results within a couple hours.
At this time, Ottawa Family Physicians is requiring somebody that is symptomatic to have a negative COVID test before they will see their patients, but they're doing their own tests and running those tests right here in their own lab. Okay. So that's why they're able to get those results so much faster. We don't have a lab of our own to run them.
All right. Thank you, Casey.
Yep.
Morning, Sheriff. Anything?
Morning. I don't want to shift gears too much since I do have a COVID thing. We worked with the health department. As I mentioned before, we already have some of us that are been trained and allowed to do the rapid test for our staff when we have any type of exposures. We've expanded that a little bit now so that we can also include taking care of rapid tests for inmates. If we have a positive, then it's still going to require that follow up with the health department for the PCR test. But if the health department's not available, it's a way that we can provide a little relief to the health department having to come in, and it helps us as far as with transports and housing and things like that. So that is an additional thing that we worked with the health department to do. This week we have had a new court security deputy that started. Brian Jung started with us on Monday, and he's a court security deputy, so we are full there. And we will be full staff on our patrol division as well here shortly. Through that process, the person going there actually works in the jail, and currently, so we do have some openings in our jail. Our jail staffing is never real pretty, but it's not unique here. That's everywhere across the country for correction spots. But we've got some ideas on some recruiting things that we're doing there. I know that new undersheriff has already reached out to the high schools in the county. We already have a relationship built in with Ottawa, with USD 290, with their LPSS program. But we have new flyers that have been created, and we've talked with them. We'll be meeting with both the colleges here, probably this week or next week as well, to see what we can do on getting some more people recruited for those positions. And last week I mentioned that we were going to be finishing up a promotion process in the jail for a sergeant position, and Maddie Garner who was selected for that sergeant position, so she'll be promoted on the 21st, and will be assuming the duties as our assistant. So Maddie is a product of that USD 290 LPSS program, and started with us. She graduated high school on a Saturday and started on a Monday morning, and has been with us ever since. And that program gives us people that have developed into fine professionals, and we appreciate that relationship that we have there with that program. So things are going well there. And then last thing I have for you guys is that Monday the city of Pomona did approve the law enforcement contract, so we should have everything done on that when I get the signed contracts back. I will answer any questions that you guys have.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Paul Bean, FCDC.
Morning, Commissioners. I'm back before you, same document that you approved last week, but I realized when I was in front of the City Commission, we used an old template for our funding agreement. The only change, it's not the dollar amount, any of that, but you may recall we had discussions last spring. There used to be a condition in there that FCDC was required to hold back 10%. And I'd asked for an adjustment to that to give us some flexibility. Plus, if we have more than 10%, then all of that, in my opinion, should go into the reserve. So the rewording on this is basically FCDC agrees that any annual surplus at the end of the fiscal year will be transferred to the reserve account of FCDC. The funds would be available in future years if needed for operational expenses related to economic development projects. Projects may include, but are not limited to, incentive funding, land acquisition, or other projects required to meet the economic development goals of the organization. So it basically gives us a little more flexibility. An example that would fall under this, just like we did a couple of years ago when I came on board, we really needed to spend some money on our marketing and website and kind of get back up to speed, and that was over and above the budget. So it just gives us flexibility for things like that when we need it. But want you to know, I don't have the November financials yet, but the reserve account at the end of October was about $20,000 more in 2021 than it was a year ago. So we're doing our best to protect that and grow it as much as we can. I had a kind of an eye-opening moment earlier this week. I'm on an economic development panel that's presenting to about 170 people next week, and the panelists, we had a pre-meeting, and I commented that, yeah, it's nice to have those funds where you have 50, 100,000 that you can put into a project if you need to, and everybody was pretty jealous that we have that because they don't. So I think we've done a pretty good job with the reserve. Ask that you, again, approve the funding agreement if you would with that change, and I apologize. That's my oversight. I should have caught that the first time.
And we could have put this on as another agenda item, but given that this was just in front of you, the contract is literally the same. It's $64,375. Is that right, Paul?
Correct.
Same amount. It's just the modification in language about the reserve transfer. So if you all are okay with that, maybe just a quick motion and then we'll be good.
Be a motion to approve the modified funding agreement.
Absolutely.
I know you worked so hard last year to get that change, and then I listened to the study session on Monday when you realized that, we used the old one. So I would make a motion that we approve with the amended change.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Stottlemyre?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Dickinson? Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Chair Waymire?
Yes. Thank you. I'll just leave that for here.
Perfect. I'll give it to you or the clerk. Will do.
I think supporting what Paul does, especially I seen the other day, it keeps coming towards us. It's going to get here. I just seen where Johnson County approved another 500 acres for the industrial park up there the other day. That's a lot of land. And basically up there in that neighborhood, to find 500 acres. So they just improved another 500 acres. So I hope they can find the employment, but, that's the only sticker to the whole thing, But hopefully it'll come back someday.
All right. Kenny, anything you need to add that wasn't covered? All right. Christie, same offer? No? All right. Public Works?
Okay, so our crews have been pretty busy the last few weeks. We've patched either concrete or asphalt to about 10 different locations. We've repaired or installed 7 entrances, 3 crossroad tubes, and completed 6 ditching projects, along with hauling rock every day and picking up trash, which seems to be an everyday occurrence now too, and then repairing some damaged locks down at the Fort Scott crossing. Crews are working on 2 more crossroad tubes, one on Reno west of Wyoming and another one on the east edge of the city of Rantoul. The city of Rantoul is wanting to do a much larger project. This is a little something that we're doing to help them out. Both of these drainage or these crossroad tubes will help a little bit in solving some pretty big drainage issues that the area resident and the city of Rantoul have. Project-wise, we had a project meeting with SES on the landfill project a few weeks ago. They've completed the drone flight of the area where we're working on the C&D landfill. They will add that data into the contours for the site to be able to generate good engineering design from that. Also, let's see, on I think it's the 21st, we are going to be digging some test pits to identify the limits of the, years ago, our landfill started out as a MSW landfill, which is municipal solid waste. What we send out in the transfer station, we used to bury on site. And so we're going to dig some test pits around the location to be able to identify the limits of that, so that, again, that information is needed for the design to help us to be able to place the stormwater detention facilities and those sorts of things. And we're going to use our equipment and manpower to dig the holes. Saves us a little bit of money rather than having a contractor come in. So that project is moving right along. Tomorrow afternoon, I've got a meeting with Bartlett West to go over the work that they've completed on the master plan for the shop area. I anticipate sometime early next year having a study session to go over that in more detail here with the commission. The Old 50 project, that project is moving along pretty well also. They've collected all the topo data already. They've got the pavement data. Right now, they've got survey crews out on Old 50. If you've driven down there, you've probably seen them out. They're collecting all the utility information on the first 8 miles of that road. So they'll be there probably another week or so doing that. So that project's going along just fine. The Osborne Terrace bridge project, next week I'll be bringing before you a contract to do the geotech work associated with the bridge design. They're ready for that information, and so I'll be bringing that to you. And also, I'm ready to start right-of-way acquisition for that. They've got the limits defined well enough that after the first of the year, I'll be meeting with the landowners to work on that right-of-way acquisition. So that's what's going on in Public Works.
Question for you, Dave.
Yes, sir.
I have a council member from one of the cities. Did you make a statement a while back on this reclamation deal that we worked for to tear down the buildings in different towns and communities? Would you be going around to each one eventually?
Yes.
That's what I told them. I told them what little bit I could feed, but I said the smartest thing to do is, I'm pretty sure David said he'd be coming around later.
They all...
they were interested.
Yeah. It'll take several months because they all kind of meet at the same time.
As long as they know. They see it on our website, so we've already got it out as far as...
That it's coming?
Yeah, that it's coming.
I've got a draft of the form on my desk that we need a little bit more work on that, but it's about ready to go. So first of the year, I'll be scheduling some appointments with.
It's always good to know people are actually looking at the website and getting that information. So.
Yeah, but we're about ready to start that as well.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I included in your email this week that I sent to you the proposed budget amendment that we're going to have on the agenda next week. We wanted to make sure that all of you are present, and I had asked in the past weeks if you would let me know if you weren't, and we were going to have someone absent, so I wanted to make sure that you all got to be here for that. So we did go ahead and publish the proposed amendment in the paper so it would have enough time to be on the agenda for next week. So if you guys have any questions about that, the only two funds that we're proposing to amend is the solid waste fund and the Centropolis sewer. I think all the other ones are currently looking pretty good, but it's always a moving target at the end of the year as department heads make their final expenditures for the year. So, and those do carry over into January and February expenditures for the end of the year. So sometimes we have something unexpected come up at the end of December that we just can't plan for. So, but those are the only two funds that we're planning to amend. We also will have the transfers before you, hopefully next week. I'll be getting with those department heads that do transfers to make sure that their transfer is set to go. And also, I received another email yesterday regarding neighborhood revitalization, and so we'll have another neighborhood revitalization approval on the agenda. So those continue to really come in, and it seems to be really helping the community. So,
yeah. All right, Commissioners, Omar.
I'll be going to Wellsville City meeting, and I went to Rampville the other night, and a lot of discussion there. They're doing a lot of, their maintenance man, water man, took another job, and they can't blame him. And talking about, he was doing a lot of, he's doing the jobs of 2 or 3 people, and they're making a lot of discussion whether they want to go ahead and divide that back out again, you know, with a couple of people versus one guy doing the whole thing. And that's it, basically. They'll be making a big change with their board in next month. Have a couple of people coming off and a new mayor. And the new mayor coming on is already asking me a lot of questions. So that means they're, you know, interested in what their community is doing. So, and one of them was, I just mentioned there. So if they're looking, you know, new people are interested enough to go to our website, see what we're doing. And that sounds good to me, you know. That's all I got.
I attended the Chamber Coffee for United Way. They're doing a year-end push, you know, and that is, and now that I've been attending the board meetings, you really realize, you know, it's not just a, you know, write a check in December and you're done. It's an organization that helps people all through the year. On Saturday, I went to the chili supper at Princeton. They have a chili supper Christmas meal every year, and Santa comes. And then I went to the Princeton meeting on Monday night. They have gotten a preliminary engineering report. They've hired an engineer to look at their drainage system and all of their. And they know they have a problem with their street. That this is the first part. It kind of give them an idea of what they're actually going to be looking at to properly to move forward. They're hoping that maybe this new infrastructure bill that's coming might give them some additional funding, because as a small town, that's going to be a big expense that they don't have. The city of Ottawa had their study session. They are looking at getting all of the coves lots closed by the end of the year. And that will be exciting to see what happens, you know, what we're looking at in 12 months of what could be out there. And that's pretty much all I have.
I might just mention the passing of Bob Dole this weekend. Today marks the 80th anniversary of President Roosevelt declaring war on Japan after the December 7th bombing of Pearl Harbor. And, of course, Bob Dole was injured at the end, close to the end of World War II in 1945 and partially paralyzed. But he represented Kansas for many years in Washington, D.C. And every time any of our elected officials mention Kansas, you kind of perk up and see what they got to say. And it's really neat to have somebody that's been in Washington so long and representing Kansas and the veterans and all that. So I think there's going to be a ceremony at Russell, Kansas for him. And I think he's going to lie in the state at the Capitol and Topeka too. And so just a passing of a great American and a great Kansan, Senator Bob Dole.
I'd look for a motor. Yep.
I failed to mention that that we had a promotion within the Public Works Department as well. Ryan Fine, who has been our longtime road and bridge foreman, has moved on to become the Osage County Public Works Director, and we have promoted Rusty Tall, who is one of our longtime blade operators, into that foreman position, and I totally failed to mention that, and that's we wish Ryan all the luck in the world in his new position, and we're really excited about what Rusty is going to bring to the table for us in this new position for him. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, need a motion to adjourn. Need a second?
Second.
Who's in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned.